You're watching a Highwire Media podcast.
It's been 23 days since the 2024 presidential election, where Donald Trump capped off his political comeback in an epic and resounding fashion by defeating Kamala Harris. Speaking of Kamala Harris, we haven't heard much from her since her concession speech, which she gave the morning after that election. That is, until now. She recently released a video distributed by the Democrats on social media where she essentially tells her supporters to keep up the fight. In the video, Harris appears visibly disheveled. It looks like she might have started drinking the moment the polls closed in Indiana and Kentucky. And the first results trickled in, and she hasn't stopped since. Reports have suggested that she was vacationing in Hawaii rather than fully attending to her duties as vice president. Duties she still technically holds. Upon her return, she looks far from her best. To be clear, you don't have to take anyone's word for it. You can look at or listen to the clip yourself. Even her supporters on Blue Sky, the knockoff Twitter platform, have been making similar observations. Regardless, it's worth playing the clip because it's very telling. If you don't believe me? Take a listen to it right here. In the clip, Harris is visibly slurring her words, and it's not a good look. Big question is why? Or why we release this. Why would Harris, her team, or the Democrats think it was a good idea? They had to know it would face significant blowback, and it has for valid reasons. Now let's consider the content of the clip. Frankly, it's not much better. If she isn't drunk, one could argue that it's worse. In that case, this is simply a bizarre, ineffective message delivered poorly. She speaks to her supporters as if they're children, spinning a vague word salad that means little and goes nowhere. Her assertion that your power is the same as it was before November 5th is technically incorrect. Her side lost power. Harris and her supporters were part of the incumbent administration, and the election results shifted that balance. Harris completely fumbled the ball during this election. She lost to Trump, a candidate her party had assured everyone was politically dead. Democrats had convinced themselves that not only would Trump lose, but that his defeat was a foregone conclusion. Yet here we are. Even so, Harris seems to be doubling down, talking to her supporters about continuing the fight, seemingly oblivious to the broader disillusionment on the Democratic side with electoral politics. It's hard to believe that Harris still has a platform. You'd think her supporters and the broader Democratic base would want her to fade into the sunset. After all, she was a weak candidate whose failures arguably helped Trump regain power. Of course, Trump deserves the bulk of the credit for his own victory, but Harris's lack of appeal certainly didn't hurt his chances. And yet the Democrats haven't learned their lesson. Instead of taking a step back to reevaluate, some of their base continues to engage in performative displays of outrage, like the now infamous screaming protests. One recent example involved people in Wisconsin literally screaming into Lake Michigan to express their frustration about Trump's victory. They even distributed flyers advertising this primal scream event intended to collectively get their frustration out. This kind of thing happened after Trump's 2016 win as well, but it seems to be less common now because many people on the left are simply exhausted. Still, their core base remains engaged in these kind of actions, which is who Harris seems to be addressing in her video. As for Harris, there's a theory circulating that the Democrats themselves are quietly trying to sabotage her future political prospects. The idea is that her own party is leaking these awkward moments, knowing they will harm her popularity. Why? Because Harris still harbors political ambitions. Despite her defeat, she's polling surprisingly well among Democrats for the 2028 nomination. Early polling from 3 different firms show Harris leading the pack. This is astounding considering she lost the election that many Democrats believed was nearly impossible to lose. Her current support can be chalked up to name recognition, but the fact remains. The Democrats don't seem to have a strong bench of alternative candidates. Harris may try to position herself for another presidential run, or perhaps a gubernatorial bid in California if Gavin Newsom is term limited. Reports suggest that she's advising her team to keep her political options open. What's remarkable is how much money was spent on her 2024 campaign. $1.6 billion in the final 3.5 months alone. That's right, $1.6 billion with a B. That's an astronomical amount, especially considering Trump's campaign spent a fraction of that and still won handily. Where did all that money go? A significant chunk went to social media influencers and celebrities who ultimately alienated more voters than they brought in. The campaign was, by all accounts, a charade propped up by vibes and empty rhetoric, with no real substance to attract widespread support. If Harris has any hopes for the future, they're slim. Internal memos leaked from her campaign have already revealed that even her team didn't believe she was ahead of Trump in polling during the final stretch. The honeymoon phase she experienced after Biden's withdrawal was entirely fabricated, buoyed by narratives pushed by her supporters that never held up under scrutiny. At the end of the day, Harris's 2024 campaign failed because it offered no compelling vision for voters. The state of the economy in the country was dismal, with only around 20% of Americans believing the nation was on the right track. Under those conditions, no amount of messaging or fundraising could change the outcome. So now Democrats face a dilemma. They want Harris to step aside, but they don't have a clear alternative. Looking ahead to 2028, the landscape remains uncertain. J.D. Vance is shaping up to be a formidable Republican candidate, and the Democrats desperately need someone with broad appeal to challenge him. We'll see how this all plays out in the coming years. In the meantime, hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll end this video on that note. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss another video. Of course, if you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/twledger. That's buymeacoffee.com/twledger. As always, your support is appreciated. Always you can find us on all major podcast platforms, Good Pods, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from. And if you're listening on podcast on Spotify or Good Pods, leave us a review. Let us know what you think of our episodes. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.